This is our rounding lesson for third grade on 8-12. We started talking about rounding today, and we created an anchor chart. So if your child doesn't have this, make sure they pause the video and create this in their math notebook. It's going to be really important. We're going to spend a lot of time on this week, and we will continue to hit it throughout the year. It has everything to do with reasonable answer and estimating, and so we will always keep coming back to this idea of rounding. So here's our anchor chart. It says rounding. Rounding means to change a number to a close number that is easier to work with. So we talk a lot about math practices in here, and math practice number 1 tells us to never give up. And when we have that, and we have a hard number or a complex number, we want to break it down to an easier number, a simple number. So that's pretty much what rounding is. Rounding takes that difficult number to work with, like 79, and helps us to turn it into a number that's close to that, like 80. And 80 is a lot easier to add than 79 is. So that's kind of the importance of that rounding. Now, the way that we do rounding is we want to say that we're mathematicians. So to be a mathematician, we have to speak like a mathematician. So mathematicians use precise words. Math practice number 6, we use precise words. And the words we use when we talk about rounding are benchmarks. Here, these benchmarks are our tens. So if I started at 0 and I counted by 10 till I got to 100, those tens are my benchmarks. So my benchmarks are 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. Those are my benchmarks when it deals with rounding to the nearest 10. To the nearest 10, I'm working on those benchmarks. So for example, on our anchor chart, we have the number 42. Well, we want to look at our number line, and we want to see what two benchmarks, what two numbers does 42 come between? Okay, what two numbers do 42 come between? So if I was doing this number chart, this number line, and I was plotting the number 42, it would go between 40 and 50. Those are my benchmarks, 40 and 50. And then we look at that and we see which one is it closest to. Is it closer to 40 or is it closer to 50? Well, it's closer to 40, so it rounds to 40. The next one, 29. 29 is between those benchmarks. I want to know, sorry. Once again, those benchmarks. I want to know what two numbers does 29 fall between. So if I was going to plot the number 29, I want to know what two benchmarks does that come between. So if I looked at my number line and I counted them all out, it would fall between 20 and 30. Those are my two benchmarks. You're going to hear me use those words all the time, and I'm going to expect our kiddos to use those words as well. Because we want to be a mathematician. Mathematicians use precise words. So it falls between 20 and 30. And if you look at it to see which is it closest to, it's closest to 30. So it would round to 30. The tricky ones is that one on the bottom, anyone that ends in 5. So we have 65. So our first step, and you'll hear me say this a lot, is we start with what we know. So what do we know about the number 65? We want to see the two benchmarks that it falls between. So we look at our number line. We might have to draw a number line, but right now we have one for us. You look at it. What two numbers does 65 come between? Okay. Well, it comes between 60 and 70. Those are my benchmarks. Now, when it lands on a 5, we want to give it the benefit of the doubt. It's like getting a test grade and you got a 99.5. Man, that's really close to 100. That is so close. So hopefully the teacher is going to give you the benefit of the doubt and is going to round up. So anytime we have the number anytime we have the number 5, we want to think about, let's give it the benefit of the doubt and let's round up to the next number. So if we have it closest between 60 and 70 and it ends in a 5 and we're going to round it up, the closest number is going to be is 70. It is 70. Now we also, this is going to look weird for a second. Get out of here. Go back to my desk. They also have this work mat. Now what I did is I printed mine off and I put it in that plastic sleeve that I gave most of you guys. These are just plastic sleeves from Office Depot or anywhere. If you need to buy some, they're real cheap. You can buy a whole bunch. So this is on their Google Classroom math, and it's down as a resource. And they can use this. It has a hundreds chart. So if they're having a hard time trying to figure out what two tens a number falls between, have them use this until they feel more comfortable. You can also practice and say, just tell them, ask them questions. All right, 42. What are the two tens? Just keep asking them questions until they feel comfortable with it. We talked today about working our brain, working that muscle. And when we do that, it gets stronger and we grow and we feel more confident in our math. So really keep really challenging those with those things. So here's an example. Let's say we have 61. I'm going to put 61 in the middle here. And I'm going to go over to my chart. And I want to draw a line until I hit these. See, these numbers right here are our benchmarks. These numbers right here are our benchmarks. So I'm going to draw a line. Oh, I hit 60. And if I draw a line this way, I hit 70. So my two benchmarks are 60 and 70. And then if I want to figure out which one's it closer to, I can once again look at these lines and say, oh man, look how close that is. And look how far away 70 is. So I'm just going to circle the one that it rounds to. I'm going to circle the one it rounds to. You can pause this video at any time. I'm going to go ahead and do a few more. This is always a hard one. Let's do 8. So once again, I'm going to find 8. And we'll circle it. And I'm going to draw my lines till I get to the end of the row. So that's 10. And that's 0. So my benchmarks are 10 and 0. And then I look to see which one's the closest to. That's how I round. Which one's the closest to. Really simple. I don't have to learn any tricks. I don't have to learn about, so you might see rounding roller coasters, rounding rainbows. We don't have to learn any tricks. We just look at the work, think about it. What's my most reasonable answer? And that's what I round to. So I have 8. I go, oh, I'm only 2 away from 10, or I have to go all the way over here. So the one that rounds to is 10. That's the one it's closest to. And like I said, those 5s are hard. Those 5s are hard. So I'm gonna do 75. And feel free, if you don't have this, you can't print this out, you don't have a whiteboard, you don't have a plastic sleeve, just do it on a piece of paper. Give them a number and say, what are my two benchmarks? To ask them to explain why that's a benchmark. And then let's round it to the nearest one. So I have 75. I'm going to circle 75 here. I'm going to draw my line. Oh, that gets me to 80. Draw my line to the other benchmark. That gets me to 70. And like I said, when it ends in 5, you got to think about, oh, it's so close to both of them. But, man, they've worked so hard to get to that 5. I want to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I want to round up to that 80. I want to round up to that next one. And that's kind of what we talked about with That's what we talked about with rounding. I'm going to show you our homework real quick because there's been some people, I don't think I gave great directions on it. So I'm going to go to my Symbaloo and then Google Classroom. That's how I get on it. And then I'm going to go down to 3rd grade math. Go to classwork. And it's just right here. I'm going to open this up. And you'll find that I also included the hundreds chart if your kiddo needs it. If they don't need it, don't use it. Okay? If they don't need it, don't use it. But they're going to round the numbers to the nearest kin, and they're going to include the benchmarks. So We're going to find the number 53. Found the number 53, and I'm going to go straight over. Well, it's 50. So right here, I would type, I don't know if I'll be able to type in this or not. Right here, I would type 50. And then here's my 53. I go all the way to that blue, and it's 60. And then I have to see which one is it closest to. Well, it's closest to that 53. So I would put the number, sorry, it's closest to 50. So I would put the number it rounds to after the equal sign. I would put the number it rounds to after the equal sign. If you have any questions, feel free to dojo me or email or comment on that assignment. A lot of kiddos have been doing that. Thanks.